It's fine. Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. No, nothing happened. Nobody died. No, no. It's fine. Hit the credits. Right, okay. I've taken a bit of time to come back and rewatch this before I speak about it in a little bit more detail because, wow, okay. Wow, what a episode of television. Not just what a cartoon, what a half an hour of insane drama that was. Jesus Christ, I'm shattered watching it. The first time I was breathless and knew something was going on and then it dropped. This time, knowing it was coming made it worse, much worse, I'm sure of it. So, okay, I have got phone notes. So if I'm looking down, that's what I'm doing. But good lord. Okay, here we go. We're just gonna go into it. To start this episode, the previously on covered everything that's not storm related from the last few episodes. So it gave the impression that the arc that began in episode 1 is coming to an end. I did not guess how much. I thought we'd be wrapping things up and moving the story on, and I suppose we have, but good lord. We also got some hints about who the story was going to focus on from the little bits in the intro that change every episode. We've got focus on Rogue and on Gambit and on the Morlocks, all of whom are crucial beats in this story. And I just... yeah, wow. Okay, so there are 3 threads really that I think are going on in here, 3 key elements, and they intersperse throughout, but I'm gonna address them separately. So thread 1 is basically back at the mansion and is the TV interviews. Thread 2 is Genosha and the additional complications of Gambit, Magneto, and Rogue, and thread 3 is just that finale. And okay, what a finale. So we'll address the first one first, and then we will move through spotting everything that I've spotted as we go. So our first thread is this series of TV interviews at the mansion, and it's they seem well enough intentioned, if I'm honest. Certainly the way it goes with Beast at the start and the respect that goes back and forth between Beast and the reporter is very... it seems genuine. It seems like it's something they're both keen to do. But as we go on and we follow this plot a little bit more, and just cutting through the bits of the interviews, we see Jean and Scott sort of in the kitchen, not looking at each other. And even though there's no words said, you get the impression that things are cold between them. And this plays out more. As we get to Scott's interview and he's asked about his child, he inherently lies about not having a child. He and Jean don't have a child. Well, I say lies. He doesn't lie, but from the human's point of view, he's lying. Because he does have a child. He has it with Pryor, obviously. But he and Jean don't have a child, and that is, again, indicative of this rift that's forming between them because he still loves Madeline as well as Jean. And... the crew don't understand him. Oh, can you take your glasses off? No, it would kill you. Of course I can't take my glasses off. But it puts him on the back foot, and then asking him about this in the hospital, and asking him about Jane and the romance, it's all very difficult for him. And we have this wonderful scene where Wolverine approaches Jane and she's hiding underwater trying to process memories, and they have a conversation about when she was Phoenix, and Scott's having the same conversation with the reporter, and it's cutting from one to the other, and it's telling the whole story of this encounter, but from each of their different perspectives, and the beats are absolutely masterful. The storytelling in this episode is utterly gorgeous. Like, even the smaller stuff, this is the soap opera element of X-Men. It is a family drama soap opera with superhero action. That is what the X-Men have always been. These people who have to live together and learn together and work together because of the world and because of who they are and what they are. There's always going to be a dysfunctional family element about that, and we get that to the fore here. We get Scott saying things he would never normally say. His Boy Scout element is gone. His interview is going to do so much harm for the image of the X-Men amongst the public. And then, to top it all, Jean, who's having the conversation with Logan, suddenly kisses him impulsively, loses control, or decides she wants to see the true depth of his feelings and kisses him. And Logan, for his to his credit, this is what he's wanted for years. He's totally unprepared for it and tells her, no, this is not how it is. It's you and it's Scott. Go now. Go to him now. Sends them off. And so we catch up with those a bit later in the episode, trying to patch things up, and Jeannie's asking about Nathan, and Scott's saying, I can't see colour, but I can, in my mind, I can see his brown eyes. And as they get closer and kiss, Jean's powers manifest again, and she realises that he's having this psychic contact with Madeline, and she feels betrayed. It was their thing. And they have this huge row. It goes through the whole house and in front of the news crew, and it is the most human element to these two people having a row. The reasons they're having it are completely unknown. How can you explain to these humans that you had a child with the clone of your wife, who you couldn't tell was not the clone of your wife because Mr. Sinister did it so well, and that then he stole your child, infected your child with a technovirus, so you had to send the child into the future in the vain hope that he would survive because the future will have a better technology from which to save him, and therefore you've sacrificed your child and you're grieving it. You can't explain that to someone who's not been through it. It's not going to make sense. So it was the most human of arguments for the most inhuman of reasons. And right at the end of that argument, Jean has a burst of energy and goes down to her knees, and Scott is showing concern for her again because she's clearly in distress, but we don't know why. So thread 1, family drama in the extreme. I loved it. It was really good. It didn't have me at the points at the start of the episode and where it was crossing with the second thread of Genosha. It didn't have me worrying at all. Nothing like that really happened. I was like, this is great. It's good storytelling. Fair enough. Plot building. I wonder what's going to happen. Let's see. Maybe this whole episode is going to be a sort of a TV documentary episode crossed with the politics on the other half of it. And I thought, well, great, fine. No problem whatsoever. And again, on that same theme, thread 2, which is the Genosha storyline. I mean, it starts brilliantly, and it starts with foreshadowing, and there's a lot of foreshadowing in this episode, and as we go through the episode, I'll point them out. But we're in the Blackbird, and as Gambit's complaining about it taking a long while, and Magneto's just like, look, you're the only person, if this plane was to suffer a malfunction, that's going to have an issue with gravity. Which is basically him showing how superior he and Rogue are to Gambit, which again foreshadows what happens later, because, you know, we all know what happens. But then we get a bit of time, we get to see Genosha, and it's a paradise. It's been turned around into this gorgeous, glorious nation with its own problems. You know, inflation's running high. It's running high everywhere, but it's really running high in a nation that you're desperately trying to make quickly. And apples at $10 is insane. But hey, things hopefully would have turned out right for them. But we learn a lot. So Madeline Pryor's landed on her feet. She's on the council here because they wanted an X-Man, and they've got themselves their own Jean. Nightcrawler, Kurt shows up, which is great. And he's his playful, usual self, bamfing everywhere, taking people with him, puffs of smoke, hilarious quips, little poses, all the fun of Nightcrawler that you would expect. Except that he does say, while looking with Gambit at Rogue, and this is such a self-aware moment for the show, he blames soap operas, humanity, living life through dramas because of soap operas. But again, as I've said before, X-Men is at least 50% soap opera. It's it's a human story about inhuman people. And I like that, a little bit of self-awareness. But as the plot develops in this side of things, the Council of Genosha want Magneto to be king. Well, I say king, chancellor, but he says king because he's Magneto and he's still an egotist no matter how good he's trying to be. And they want him but only because Xavier is no longer there to do what they were expected he would do. And so he clearly accepts, because Magneto would never turn down power. He's not that kind of a person. But we get another bit of foreshadowing. They're talking about Xavier's dream and how he explains that any dream worth having is a dream worth dying for, which again is your next part of foreshadowing, because this is the dream and it is worth happening, and my god, do they consider dying for it. So the episode, it's like these little beats all the way. They're innocent separately, but when you watch it back, you're like, oh, wait a minute, hang on just 1 second. This bit and this bit have already suggested that bad things are going to come. But still, it's very much a personal episode. We get a backstory between Rogue and Magneto and how they met and how they got together the first time and how she left him. And then we get this amazing heart-to-heart after Gambit's just put on this absolutely slick white tuxedo. This back and forth, beat for beat emotion from both the voice actors doing such a great job. And then he gracefully bows out, knowing that one day she'll need him, and he'll be there. Gambit always is. He knows the odds. And then we move on to this thread 3. I'm going to say it starts here. It might start a bit later, but I think the whole thing starts here. I think it sums up everything that's happened as we get to this reception for the UN. And your UN lady is understandably a bit pissed that Magneto is going to become Chancellor, but also can do nothing about it because of the right to self-governance and because they're not doing anything wrong. They're just putting someone who's done wrong in charge, reformed though he seems to be right now. And so as this is going on, and he makes the point of, look, no, not just me and Rogue. It was at the insistence of this council. It could be me and someone else. And she does this great entry, and they have this incredible dance, and you get Ace of Base playing during this scene, during the dance, and this song is beautifully, perfectly done, because it's the perfect 90s beat for where we are at this point. And at this point, I couldn't quite explain it, but there was a sense of dread building. There was too much episode left for this to end how it was going to end, and you find your heart skipping a beat and you're sort of catching your breath, but you're not sure why. And again, it's masterful storytelling on this episode. This is half an hour, and in half an hour they've taken us 3 different places and they're taking us somewhere again. And as this happens and it's all building and this dance is going on, Madeline receives what I think is the spark from Jane and sees her vision of the death and the horror. It was the vision she received earlier in the season, I'm sure, but it came and it flashed very quickly, and I probably should do a frame-by-frame look through to see what was there, but it very much told us something was wrong, and blood pours from her nose. And initially I thought, oh my god, is this clone not long for this world? But I don't think so. I think it was just the force of that vision that caused her nose to bleed. And as that happens, the music, and again, we'll talk about sound design in this episode a bit more, but the music at this point, it drops from this lovely pop thing to a minor key, and the whole scene changes ever so slightly. The colour palette shifts just a little bit, and then the music at this minor key, and then you get Cable, and Rogue is chasing after Gambit, and Cable shows up, and he's get out of the way, and the fireworks are going off, but in the background there's 2 green flashes which are not fireworks, and you instantly know that sense of dread that has been building is for this moment, and that Cable is too late. Boom, Madeline recognizes Cable as Nathan, and he apologizes and gets whipped back in time. He wasn't fast enough. He wasn't able to make the change that he wanted to make, and then boom, flash, chaos, death, and it's just the stop, the replay, the start, and the scene just stutters, and it goes from reception to carnage, and it goes from that in about 5 seconds, and it is just beautiful. And then everything is going nuts, and there's this creature that to me reminds me of the Wild Sentinel from, I think, Grant Morrison's run, when Genosha was attacked and 16 million mutants died. And there are so many dead, and one of them who is very nearly dead is Nightcrawler, who saves Rogue and Magneto and takes the hit, and he gets them to safety. But he's bleeding everywhere, and he looks broken, but he's not. He's barely hanging on, but he's alive, and he's done his duty and he's saved them. But there are so many dead. And the three-headed Sentinels dropping other Sentinels all over the place. People are running. Each blast from the Sentinel, I'm not talking the big green blast, I'm talking little lasers are just disintegrating a mutant with each shot. There are thousands of people dying all over the place. And Magneto, ever the strategist at this point, and ever the one for a speech, because every time he's spoken in this series, I've stood up and taken notice, because the writing for Magneto has been perfect. He's a poet, and whoever's written it has really seen that, and seen the sort of the poet and the artist in him, and brought that into the way he talks. It's always with more grandeur than it needs to be. But we shall not live our days wondering if we could have saved more. More foreshadowing. Okay, more. At this point, they've told us 3 times something bad, something really, really bad is happening. And so he sends, the Morlocks need saving. They're basically under the belly of the beast at the moment and can't get to safety, and he promised he would not abandon them. So he sends Gambit to do that with Rogue's support, while he runs interference with this giant Wild Sentinel. And Gambit and Rogue make such a team, and they're making a point of this now that she's chosen him. She rejected Magneto after the dance, and Gambit never saw that, but we did. But then together they make a great team, and Gambit decapitates 3 Sentinels with 3 cards whilst on his motorbike without falling off, while Rogue bashes one against the wall after getting bashed back, and they fly together, and it's glorious, and they're on their way to get this get to the place where the Morlocks are and get them free. And all the while Magneto's playing defense, and he's being the distraction. He's trying to catch its attention, because he's the threat. He's really the threat. And he's taking an absolute beating. And then things go from bad to worse at this point, because they get to the Morlocks and Gambit gets them out, and that's great. But as they get out of their building, crash into the ground next to them is Magneto, who has been fighting and doing his best, but he's there, and he's noticed as an Omega level threat, and we know what that means. That's as bad as it gets as far as Sentinels are concerned, and this Sentinel can deal with Omega level threats. That's its purpose. And just so at this point, Magneto's on the floor. Leech has run to him. He's got Leech in his arms. He's got his shield up, and the green face beam that comes from the Sentinel is huge, massive, and it's powering and it's melting the ground all around, and his shield's holding out as much as he can. And Rogue goes to try and help him, and Gambit's like, no, you'll die. It's too strong. It's too powerful. Magneto knows this as well. At this point in time, Magneto knows that he is likely done for, and he uses some girder to push them back and tie them up to a pillar, and then shields them with everything he can, all the while holding off this beam. And his eyes and Rogue's eyes looking through the cracks in their own enclosures until she can see him no more. And in German, he looks to poor Leech, who's in his arms, and in German he just says, "Don't be afraid," and gone. Absolutely, we see nothing more of him. Rogue is enraged. The Sentinel, Omega level threat neutralized. Done. Move on to the next. Let's kill the rest of them. And that's it. That's Magneto dead as far as the show is concerned. Now, we've not seen the body, but we'll see it. We'll talk about that. But then the rage that Rogue flies into, she's going to take this thing out on her own. Only Gambit knows that she can't take this thing out on her own. Magneto couldn't touch it. He used a train as a whip, and in vengeance for when the Xavier statue fell onto everybody, and he couldn't touch it. He couldn't damage this thing. It is powerful, insanely powerful for what they've been facing. And so he chases after her, and she's off, flying straight at it. It turned around, charging its beams up, ready to finish her off as well, and it probably would have vaporized her because she's not taking any extra powers at the moment. She's just a usual tough self. So he kinetically charges his bike and throws it at her, which knocks her flying out of the way. And he runs after it, saying he knows the odds. And he charges after it, and as he's leaping up to make contact with it, a little arm comes out and just into his side and stops dead. And it's like, oh, mutant threat neutralized. Doesn't even say Omega level threat at this point, just threat neutralized. And his sort of broken and bloodied form sits up, impaled as he is, bleeding as he is, and starts to charge the arm, and thus the whole construct with everything he has. And we get the episode title from this moment, and it's a masterful choice of title as well, because you don't know why it's called that until now. But when he says the name's Gambit, remember it, and at that point you know he's dead. There's no way out of this for him. He is definitely 100% dead, and he detonates his kinetic energy through the whole Sentinel, the mass of it. Everything he's got goes into it, and he falls broken and lifeless to the ground. And we end the episode with Rogue cradling his body, crying over him, saying she can't feel him. Episode done. And honestly, the best half an hour of television I have watched in as long as I can remember. And there's some bits I just want to discuss about, because the sound design, I've mentioned it previously, the sound design in this episode is masterful, and I'll tell you why. Firstly, we have Ace of Base, which is great, and secondly, that drops to a minor key, which immediately changes the scene and changes the feel of things. But from the moment that Xavier statue fell, about 4 minutes from the end, there's no music. There's not one piece of music until the credits roll, and even then the credits roll and they've done the theme tune in the minor key as well. At that point, there's nothing. It is just the sound of battle and the sound of panting and of pain and the odd piece of conversation. There is nothing musical that happens, and the team who've done the sound for this have done such a good job, because they fill that gap, because you use music to set the tempo and just set emotion and to give people an idea of what's happening. And when you don't have that, you've got a void with which to fill, and they left enough space that you could feel the silence and feel that the mechanical whining and the explosions and the blasts and the breath and the movement and patter of feet, all of that was so well placed in the soundscape that you didn't really notice that there was an emptiness, except that you knew something was really badly wrong. And it was so well done. I'm so happy with this. I mean, I'm not happy at all. It's shit. It's really shit. They've killed Gambit. They've probably killed Magneto. Possibly killed Magneto. And they've killed millions of other mutants. And this is episode 5, okay? This is episode 5. There are 10. Alright? We've got Life Death next, which I think we probably need a personal story after this, but Jesus, alright? So, here's the question. Who is dead? Many council members, most of the people we saw throughout this are dead. I'm not even sure if Pryor's not dead, because there was a face and some red hair, but I think you're maybe meant to think that, but I don't know if that is the case, or if perhaps that is just a decoy, or whether she is dead, who knows. But Gambit, I think is definitely dead. Now, in the books, he only dies once. He dies in the other world and is resurrected by Apocalypse as one of the Horsemen. Now, I think if this show has something going for it and some foreplanning, and I think it does, because I think it's already got a second series nearly done, and they're recording for a third series. So I think that maybe we're going to see the Horsemen and the return of Gambit as a villain supporting Apocalypse. I think we will see that in the next series, possibly the one after, but it's there for him, so that's fine. But Magneto. Now, in the arc, the Grant Morrison arc that this seems to have adapted, he gets away and is thought dead until he reappears, and I feel that that will likely be the case. Now, a lot of people online are saying we've seen Cable, and so some time traveling shenanigans are going to happen and we're going to undo this. I don't know that we are. I mean, it's so epic, so big, so devastating that to undo it would be cheap. And I think that seeing Cable and giving us the warning gives us the hope that that can happen, but I don't think it can. I think that what actually is, that was his attempt, and his attempt failed, and he's not going to get another one. And I'd like to think that that is how it goes. That said, there's an episode title in a couple of episode time which suggests there's going to be more Cable, so who knows. But if that's the case, I will say now that Gambit is definitely dead, Magneto is definitely alive and is going to come back, and I think that's going to be the way of it. I can't think that they would kill them both off. Also, I think killing Magneto off cheapens Gambit's sacrifice a little bit, because this episode was about Gambit. At the end of the day, this was, and people have said this a lot, and you see a lot of people complaining that their characters are being poorly done to in this, and a lot of people complaining that Wolverine's not had a moment yet. A lot of people last week were complaining that Rogue and Gambit were being underused. People have always complained about Jubilee, and people have complained about Cyclops and Storm. Well, in the first two episodes, we saw Cyclops and Storm for the true beasts that they are, and the next episode we got to see Magneto being badass and doing really well. We also got that in episode 2 as well. We also got Jean Grey being mentally super psychic powerful. Episode 4, we got to see Jubilee learn more about her powers and have a badass moment versus Mojo. In this episode, we get Gambit and Rogue, and they are done such a service, and Gambit is as good as Gambit has ever been in any media as far as I'm concerned. That was magnificent, and so I assume we'll see more. I assume everyone's going to get their moment to shine, and that will include Wolverine, and all these people who are complaining about how their favourite characters had a disservice done just need to wait and just need to see, because you cannot do everything when you are telling good stories. You cannot fit all the characters in at once without cheapening the plot and without diluting the succinct nature that you're doing with these half-an-hour episodes. So, yeah, we'll leave it there, I think. What an episode. How good was that? Let's just take a moment to digest. Look forward to the conclusion of Life Death next week, and hopefully the return of Storm, because the X-Men's numbers are thin and they need somebody to come and take them by the reins at this point. In the meantime, if you would like to, we'd very much like you to subscribe to the channel, leave us a like, hit the notification bell, share with your friends. We really appreciate all of your support. It's got us a YouTube partner. We'd like to get to full partner as soon as possible, and the more you support us, the more content we're able to make. So again, thanks for your support. Please do consider subscribing. In the meantime, if you'd like to watch some more X-Men content, here is my playlist of everything I've done regarding X-Men 97 so far. And until then, take care. We'll see you next week.